Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been a student at the university for some time now. I work part-time at a local coffee shop to help pay for my tuition and drive an old Honda Civic that belonged to my grandpa. It's not much to look at, faded blue paint, a few rust spots, and the radio only picks up 2 stations clearly. But it's reliable and it's mine. I take pride in keeping it clean and running well, despite its age. That Tuesday was already stressful. I had bombed a midterm in my economics class, spilled coffee on my favorite jacket, and my boss had asked me to cover an extra shift that weekend when I was supposed to meet my study group. I was sitting in my car in the campus parking structure on a call with my academic advisor about changing my major. I had parked on the top level where there were fewer cars, hoping for some peace during my call. The parking spot next to me had been empty when I arrived, but about 15 minutes into my conversation, a shiny black sports utility vehicle pulled in beside me. 2 girls got out, laughing loudly about something. I tried to focus on what my advisor was saying about prerequisite courses, but it was getting difficult. The girl who had parked next to me was now digging through her back seat with her door wide open. Bang! Her door hit my car. I flinched but remained on the call. Bang! It happened again. I looked over to see her still rummaging through the back seat, not aware of what she was doing. Her door kept swinging back and hitting my car. Bang! Bang! The 4th time it happened, I saw her friend walk around from the other side of the sports utility vehicle. The friend pointed at my car and told the girl that her door was hitting my vehicle. The girl barely looked up from her search. She told her friend it was just some old beater car. She continued looking through her stuff while her door bounced against my car again. When she finally found what she was looking for, a designer purse, she looked over and noticed me sitting in the driver's seat. Our eyes met, and I shook my head. Instead of saying sorry, she chuckled and whispered something to her friend. I couldn't hear what she said, but both of them laughed as they walked away toward campus, not giving my car a second thought. I was mad but still stuck on my call with my advisor. We talked for another 10 minutes before finishing. By then, the girls were long gone. I sat there for a moment thinking about what had just happened. This wasn't the first time someone had treated my old car like it was worthless just because it wasn't new or flashy. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I decided I wasn't going to just let it go this time. I started my engine and moved my car to the other side of their sports utility vehicle. There were no other cars around and no security cameras pointed in our direction. I got out and looked at my door. Then I looked at her clean, shiny black door. The sports utility vehicle probably cost more than I made in a year at the coffee shop. I took a deep breath and opened my door, pulling it back as far as it would go. Slam! I hit her door with mine. It felt good. Slam! I did it again. I noticed a small dent beginning to form. Slam! 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 With each impact, I felt my frustration melting away. My old car's door was solid metal. They don't make them like that anymore. Meanwhile, her modern sports utility vehicle's door was denting more and more with each hit. After about 2 minutes, there was a nice collection of dents and scratches along her door panel. I wasn't worried about my car. It already had plenty of marks, and one more scratch wouldn't make any difference. I got back into my car feeling calm. I know what I did wasn't exactly the mature way to handle the situation, but sometimes lessons need to be taught. Maybe next time she'll think twice before treating someone else's property with such disrespect. Maybe she'll learn that just because something is old doesn't mean it's worthless. As I drove out to the parking structure, I smiled a little. I imagined the look on her face when she returned to find her expensive sports utility vehicle dented and scratched. Would she connect the dots? Would she realize that actions have results? I never saw those girls again, and nobody ever approached me about the incident. But every time I park in that structure now, I make sure to give the cars next to me plenty of space. Respect works both ways after all. I'm a single father of 2 beautiful children. a 7-year-old girl, and a 5-year-old boy. My wife passed away 3 years ago from cancer, and since then, it's just been the three of us. We moved to this small town about a year ago because I got a job at the local hospital as a respiratory therapist. It paid better than my previous job, and the schools here have good ratings. Being of Filipino descent, I sometimes get curious looks in this mostly white neighborhood, but most people are friendly enough. My kids were born here in America and have never known any other home. They're bright, cheerful, and the light of my life. That day started like any other Saturday. We were doing our weekly grocery shopping at the local supermarket. The kids were in good spirits because I promised them ice cream if they behaved, which they did. My son helped me pick out cereal while my daughter chose the ripest bananas. It was an ordinary day. After checking out, I pushed our car to our pickup truck in the parking lot. It was a warm spring afternoon and the kids were excited about having a picnic in the backyard later. I opened the back door of my truck and helped both kids into their car seats. They were chatting about what toppings they wanted on their ice cream. I told my children to sit tight while I loaded the groceries. My daughter asked if they could have ice cream as soon as we got home. I explained that we needed to have lunch first, then ice cream. My son protested, reminding me that I had promised them ice cream. I told him they would get it just after lunch. I closed their door and started loading grocery bags into the truck bed. I had my back turned for maybe 2 minutes when I heard my truck's engine start. At first, I thought I left the keys in the ignition, but they were still in my pocket. I turned around just in time to see my truck pulling out of the parking space with my children inside. For a moment, I stood frozen in shock. Then instinct kicked in, and I ran after my truck screaming. I could see my kids' frightened faces in the back window, and my daughter was crying out for me. But the truck was already speeding away. A woman who saw what happened called the police while I was running after my truck. By the time I returned to the parking spot, panting and in tears, several people had gathered. A bystander asked if I was okay and what had happened. I told them someone had stolen my truck with my kids inside and asked for help. Another bystander mentioned they thought they saw who got in, the blonde woman who had been arguing with the cashier earlier. That's when I heard crying from a few parking spaces away. A young boy and girl, maybe 8 and 6, were sitting alone in a minivan, with the windows cracked, clearly upset. I asked whether those children were alone. The first bystander who had called the police went to check and returned to tell me that the children said their mom told them to wait there while she took care of something. They had been there for at least 20 minutes. The police arrived within minutes, and I told them what had happened. They took my statement and put out an alert for my truck. They also questioned the children in the minivan who said their mother had blonde hair and was wearing a red blouse, matching the description of the woman who took my truck. The police officer told me that they already had units looking for my vehicle and they would find my children. I asked them to hurry, saying how scared my children must be. The next hour was the longest of my life. The police stayed with me and the abandoned children trying to piece together what happened. They traced the minivan's registration to a woman named Karen, who had a history of public disturbances and one prior arrest for disorderly conduct. Then finally the call came in. They had found my truck at a gas station about 30 miles away. My children were safe. The woman had been arrested. I felt relief when I heard this news. The police drove me to the station where my children were waiting. When I saw them, I broke down in tears and held them tight, promising I'd never let them go again. My daughter clung to me, sobbing. She told me that the woman had been scary and kept saying they were her kids now. My son added that he had told the woman they weren't her children, but she wouldn't listen. The police officer who had rescued them came up to me. He told me that they had arrested the woman and that she was facing charges, including kidnapping and vehicle theft. I thanked him. The officer then said there was something else I should know. I looked at my children, not wanting them to hear more upsetting details. The officer suggested we talk outside. When we were away from the children, the officer continued. He told me that the woman was upset when they caught her. She kept saying that my children should be hers because they were too good to belong to someone who isn't white. He added that she had left her own children because she said they weren't white enough due to her ex-husband's heritage. I felt sick. This woman had not only put my children in danger, but had abandoned her own based on racist ideas. The police officer told me that her kids were with Child Protective Services now. Given her record and what she did today, she was looking at jail time. In the weeks that followed, I learned more about the woman. She had been in a custody battle with her ex-husband, who was part Hispanic. She had some kind of breakdown and decided that taking my American-looking children would somehow be better than sharing custody of her own. The court process was hard, especially for my children who had nightmares for months, but there was some justice in the end. She was sentenced to 15 years for kidnapping, stealing my truck, endangering children, and abandonment. Her ex-husband got full custody of their children. As for us, we're still healing. We moved to a different neighborhood where I found a supportive community. My children are in therapy and slowly they're returning to their happy selves. I've installed every security feature on our new vehicle, and I don't think I'll ever take for granted the simple act of loading groceries again. About 15 years ago, I worked as a claims processor at a mid-sized insurance company in downtown. The pay wasn't anything special, but it was steady work with decent benefits, and most of my co-workers were pleasant enough. We'd been at the same location for years, an aging office building that had seen better days but was convenient for most of us. The building had one major flaw that everyone complained about. The tap water was absolutely disgusting. It came out of the faucets with a brownish tint and smelled faintly of rotten eggs. The building manager kept insisting it was perfectly safe to drink, but none of us were willing to test that theory. Our company's solution was to have water jugs delivered every 2 weeks. Those big 5-gallon containers that sit upside down on water coolers. Our break room wasn't huge, so we'd stack the full jugs along one wall, and the empties would go in the corner until pickup day. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional, and everyone appreciated having clean water. That is, until the new woman started. She transferred from another branch and immediately started making waves. I'll never forget her first day in the break room. I greeted her, welcoming her to our office. She thanked me but immediately questioned all the water bottles, saying it looked like we were preparing for the apocalypse. I explained about the undrinkable tap water and how the company arranged deliveries every 2 weeks. She complained that they took up too much space and made the already crammed break room even more crowded. From that moment on, she became the office's self-appointed critic. The office temperature was never right, too hot in the morning, too cold in the afternoon. The work assignments weren't fair, the copier was too slow, the bathroom soap smelled weird, the parking spots were too narrow. It was exhausting just being around her, but her biggest fixation was those water jugs. Every day she'd make some comment about them to anyone who would listen. She would ask people if they thought the number of water bottles ordered was ridiculous and a waste of space. When a coworker pointed out that we needed water, she suggested that they could order less with more frequent deliveries, or install a filtration system, or find some other solution. After about a month of this daily complaining, she apparently went to management. I was getting coffee in the break room when our supervisor walked in looking confused. He asked if I knew that the new woman had put in a formal request to reduce our water delivery, claiming that we had too many jugs, creating a safety hazard. I asked if he was serious since we went through almost all of those jugs in 2 weeks. He explained that because she was so persistent, he had approved reducing the next order by half to see if it worked. I was annoyed but not surprised. This was just how things worked at our company. The squeaky wheel got the grease, and nobody squeaked louder than she did. Later that day, I gathered a few of my work friends near the water cooler. I asked if they had heard about the water situation. One coworker mentioned that it was ridiculous since we barely had enough water as it was. Another wondered what we were supposed to do when we ran out, drink the nasty tap water. That's when I suggested we might make sure we run out. When my coworker asked what I meant, I explained the idea of drinking a lot more water than usual to empty the jugs faster. Another coworker asked if I meant deliberately using up all the water to prove a point, which I confirmed. I told them I was going to start carrying a large water bottle and filling it multiple times a day. By the end of that conversation, 5 of us had committed to Operation Hydration, as we jokingly called it. We all brought in large water bottles the next day and made a point of filling them frequently. I normally drank maybe 2 cups of water during my workday. Now I was drinking close to a gallon. The new woman noticed and commented that I was drinking a lot of water lately. I replied that I was just trying to stay healthy, mentioning that hydration was important. She just responded with a suspicious, The reduced delivery arrived the following Monday, half the usual number of jugs. We continued our water drinking campaign with dedication. By Thursday, there were only 2 jugs left. By Friday afternoon, we were down to half of the last jug. The following Monday morning, the water cooler gave that distinctive gurgling sound of emptiness just as our department head came in for his morning cup. He asked if the water was already empty and when the next delivery was scheduled. I explained that we wouldn't get more until next Monday because the new woman thought we had too many jugs, cluttering the break room, and got the delivery amount reduced. He was shocked and asked who approved that. I told him our supervisor did after the new woman claimed the jugs were a safety hazard. The department head was not happy. He immediately called our supervisor into his office. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see them through the glass walls, and there was a lot of animated gesturing. 20 minutes later, the new woman was called in. She came out looking less smug than when she went in. That afternoon, our supervisor sent an email to the whole department explaining that due to higher than anticipated water consumption, they had scheduled an emergency water delivery for tomorrow morning. He said we'd be returning to our previous order quantity and advised that any concerns about break room storage should be directed to him directly. The next morning I came in to find the wall of water jugs restored to its former glory. The new woman walked in, saw the jugs, and her face turned red. She looked like she wanted to say something but then thought better of it and walked out. One of my co-workers nudged me and asked if I saw her face. I just replied that it was priceless. From that day forward, she never mentioned the water jugs again. She still complained about everything else, the lighting, the elevator wait times, the brand of coffee, but the water jug issue was permanently off her list. My brother runs the only electronics repair shop in our small town. He's been doing it for about 8 years now, and he's built a solid reputation. I sometimes help out on weekends, which is how I got involved in this mess. Last summer, this college-age girl came into the shop carrying an expensive Alienware gaming laptop worth around $2,000. She explained that the battery wasn't charging anymore and she needed it fixed before heading back to college. My brother identified that something had damaged the charging port. He told her he could fix it but would need to order parts and it might take more than a week. The girl seemed fine with this and started filling out the paperwork. She mentioned she wouldn't be in town when the laptop was ready and asked if she could leave her mother's phone number instead. My brother agreed and made a note in his system. The repair contract includes a clause stating that any repaired item not picked up within 90 days can be put up for sale by the business, something he implemented after ending up with a stockroom full of abandoned devices. About 3 weeks later, my brother finished the repair. He called the number the girl provided, but it was disconnected. Neither of us recognized this girl well enough to track down her family, and social media searches came up empty. The laptop sat on a shelf in the back room. My brother waited the full 90 days mentioned in the contract, plus an additional month. After 4 months with no contact, he put the laptop up for sale as a refurbished item. It sold the same day to a local businessman. Everything seemed fine until last Thursday when the girl finally showed up. I was helping with inventory when she walked in. She said she was there to pick up her Alienware laptop. My brother checked his records and told her the repair had been completed in August. They couldn't reach her at the number provided, and after sitting unclaimed for over 4 months, the laptop had been sold. The girl got upset. She admitted she might have written down the wrong number, but insisted that didn't matter. She was angry that we sold her laptop and demanded $2,000 so she could buy a new one. My brother explained that we had followed our policy, which she had agreed to when she signed the repair contract. When she continued demanding money, I stepped in and pointed out that the phone number mix-up was her mistake, not ours. We tried to contact her and held the laptop much longer than required. The girl demanded to speak to the owner. When my brother said he was the owner and showed her the signed contract, she threatened to call the police and stormed out. The next day, she returned with her mother. The woman was calmer but still insisted we owed them a new laptop. My brother showed them the contract, repair documentation, and call logs. The mother asked her daughter if she had checked the number she wrote down. The daughter avoided the question, insisting we shouldn't have sold her laptop. Her mother pointed out that we tried to call and waited 4 months. The daughter walked out again, but her mother stayed to apologize. She admitted her daughter often didn't take responsibility for her mistakes. She asked if we could contact the buyer about selling the laptop back. My brother couldn't share customer information, but offered to contact the buyer himself. The buyer wasn't interested in selling as he'd already set it up for his business. Yesterday, we received a letter from a lawyer demanding $2,000 for the stolen laptop. My brother is consulting with his lawyer, but we're not worried. The contract is clear, and we did everything by the book. Some people just can't accept when they've made a mistake. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.